I've often heard it said that Scrum is what non-technical people do to try to manage technical people, and how a non-technical person tries to use technical people to build widgets. Welcome to StartupHakk. We're going to start a new series about why I hate Scrum. Now, I know this isn't super popular, but I actually really hate Scrum. And a lot of people think that means that I hate Agile overall, but I actually really love the core principles of Agile. So let's jump in and get started as we talk about why I hate Scrum today. And here we go. Reason number one that I hate Scrum. It feels like you're in a constant set of Groundhog's Day, whether it's from sprint planning into diving into the sprint, and then everybody's excited and oh, we're gonna do this, and then you get partway through the sprint, and then you're missing, and it's the end of the sprint, and everybody's sprinting, because that's why we call it a sprint, and you're sprinting, and it's this constant thrash around this every 2 weeks, or whatever your sprint length is, and it's this constant spin up, peak, spin down, constant rush. Are we getting it? Is it deployed? Are we tested? Oh, it's not done. What's the definition of done? We'll get to that in a minute. And then we get to everybody's favorite part, retro. And now back to planning, and we're right back into our Groundhog's Day. It seems like it's a constant barrage of all of the ceremonies. And honestly, I feel like just with the ceremonies alone, you waste over 20 to 25% of your productivity on this horrible Groundhog's Day washing machine that you're twisted around in. So that's the first reason I can't stand Scrum. Second thing I hate about Scrum, it puts way too much emphasis on one single person, the product manager or product owner. Whoever's in charge of ultimately being the final deciding factor on what goes into the sprint, how the stories are built, ultimately they hold all the keys into what the whole entire sprint team or dev team is going to do. It also removes all of the innovation. What you're doing is putting all that innovation into the product manager or product owner, and instead not allowing the developers to do what developers do, be creative and build awesome features. So I know there's a lot of people who are going to backlash to this, but I've been in a lot of orgs, and ultimately at the end of the day, I've really found that Scrum really kills innovation. Reason number three, I can't stand Scrum. Whenever Scrum fails, you're not doing Scrum right. And I'm so tired of hearing coaches say that over and over again. Oh, Scrum didn't work. Well, that's because you're not doing it right. I've actually never seen anybody who really does Scrum right. That's part of the problem. But then it gets into countless arguments, which is really more about like Sith versus Jedi. It's a total religion-based thing about how you're doing Scrum right. And everybody has a different opinion about how Scrum should be done right. So there are books upon books upon books. And sometimes I frequently feel like we spend so much time trying to figure out how to do Scrum right that if we'd actually spent that same amount of effort, we could have built some amazing products. So that's one of the other reasons I can't stand Scrum, is because every time you fail, it's not Scrum's fault because you weren't doing it right. Really hate that part. Reason number four, what is a perfect Scrum Master? I have run as a Scrum Master in many different organizations. Honestly, it's extremely difficult because either you're being a dictator or you're allowing the entire group to do it and you're doing it completely on a democracy. Somewhere in the middle is probably the best, but ultimately, no matter what, it comes right down to most Scrum Masters are not good. And so I haven't worked with a lot of devs who are like, oh, I have the world's best Scrum Master. You just don't see that often. Scrum Masters and how they work with a team is overarchingly a very difficult problem. Reason number five that I hate Scrum. Scrum is impossible to scale. Sure, you get one team, they may be firing, they may be running, Scrum correctly. Now you need a second team because you need to grow. That team doesn't perform really well. And then how do you take the products from those and build them up and then work with both teams? Now try to multiply that by 6 teams, now 12 teams. And then you get into Scrum of Scrums, Less, Nexus, Scrum at Scale, Safe. There's so many different ways to try to scale Scrum. And I've gone through the first 4 reasons that I don't think Scrum works. So then you start to scale it and it actually just multiplies the problem. So I know that my last organizations, we did Safe and it turned into this 2-hour-long meeting, which was just fingernails on the chalkboard. The devs constantly complaining, why do we have to be here? Product managers are all arguing and vying with each other. Stakeholders are arguing over what's the top priority. It just kind of just turns the whole thing and then just turns it all into a circus. So ultimately that's the reason I can't stand Scrum too, is because it doesn't scale. You cannot scale it into large organizations. I have rarely seen how it scales into organizations and also how it scales into larger products. So you're doing Scrum, and then as you're doing Scrum, how are you going to deploy that? Oh, well, that means that the other team needs to freeze so you can deploy. Now you've screwed up theirs. You can see how you start to talk about at scale, Scrum becomes extremely difficult. So I'm going to close my video here today with one last note about Scrum. I've often heard it said that Scrum is what non-technical people do do to try to manage technical people and how a non-technical person tries to use technical people to build widgets. And if all software development was building widgets, and if ChatGPT could produce it all, then we'd all be out of jobs and software development would be in the top 10 list of every single top 10 list out there. That's why us here at StartupHakk are working to continue to train and build the best developers out there. We can get you started as a developer or turn out new developers for your team in under 3 months. So check out the link down below. Make sure you hit startuphakk.com and let's dive in, and tell me why you hate Scrum down in the comments down below, or tell me why you think I'm wrong. I'd love a healthy debate. I know this is one I've debated with many people, so let's get into the topics down below and let's get